This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Alpine just announced yet more departures from their Formula 1 team. Bosses keep being pushed and senior technical staff keep walking. How on earth are Renault going to turn this ship around? And is this Formula 1 project actually now doing more harm than good to the brand of Alpine? My name's Tommo, let's talk about it. So who are the latest on a long list of individuals, senior individuals at that team to leave? Matt Harmon is outgoing technical director at Alpine, having joined from Mercedes in 2018 as then Renault's chief designer, and Dirk de Beer had a long-standing relationship with Enstone, having been their head of aerodynamics over two stints, 2008 to 2013 and then 2019 to 2024. He also spent time at Ferrari and Williams in that gap. Now, I'm very curious to the wording of Alpine's statement. Both have chosen to leave the team to seek new challenges. It very much indicates that the jobs were there for them if they wanted them, but they chose to say bye-bye to the project, which is indicative of a seeming lack of confidence from senior personnel in that team moving forward. Take Pat Fry, he was Alpine technical director at the start of last year, but quit and moved to Williams mid-season, a team that was objectively worse than Alpine in 2023. You're moving from a manufacturer to a customer team as well. But why, Pat? Why move? Well, his statement spoke volumes. I didn't feel the enthusiasm or the drive to move forward beyond fourth at Alpine. I decided at the start of March 2023 that I want to be pushing things forward. I don't just want to sit there and not be able to do things. So for me, that was the time to stop and move on. It's one of those things, as a company, they weren't almost set up to push hard enough. You can say that you want to be first, but the difference between saying it and achieving it is monumental. Ooh. And again, to come out with that statement when you're going from Alpine, who, yes, Enstone isn't, Ferrari or the Red Bull campus, but it's a way more established facility with way better infrastructure than what Williams have at Grove. Like, the confidence he has in the management, in James Vowles, in Dorilton at Williams is clearly way more than that at Alpine, which, again, this is a manufacturer, for crying out loud. It's terrible. But you know what isn't terrible? Having your very own website. Now, when I do these Squarespace ad reads, I often take the opportunity to push TOMMO'S Racing Goods, my t-shirts. But I'm pretty much sold out. There's like 2 extra smalls left and that's it. So thank you to everyone who purchased through my website, tommosracinggoods.com. Don't worry, new design is coming later this year. But if you want to start your very own website, your own online home, whether you want to sell a product like t-shirts like I have done, whether you've got, I don't know, a restaurant where you're selling like online courses, whatever it may be, Squarespace is the place to go. Thousands of beautiful drag and drop templates. Give it a go. It's free of charge to try. It's only when you want to publish your website live to the world you have to pay anything, and when that time inevitably comes around, head to squarespace.com/TomMife1 to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. Harmon, De Beer, Fry gone. Next, of course, Safnauer and Permain, right? You can't not talk about Otmar Safnauer in this. His CV spoke volumes from the Force India days, consistently overachieving with a relative shoestring budget, pre-budget cap era, remember, as well. Getting plenty of podiums with Checo, unfortunately never with Hülkenberg, but that's Nico Hülkenberg, unfortunately. Aston Martin didn't have quite as strong a time there. You got to imagine maybe a bit of a power dynamic between him and Lawrence Stroll. At the end of the day, when Otmar was there, he didn't get to really reap the rewards of the foundations you can certainly argue he laid. At Alpine, he just felt like he was never given the time that he needed, which again is a pretty common theme, it seems, from senior technical people, a lack of patience from the Renault higher-ups. And actually, after Bahrain this weekend just gone, he made some statements that were pretty scathing. The stopwatch doesn't lie, and it didn't look very competitive, it being the Alpine car. I do understand that. People at the highest level making not so good decisions, firing people, not creating psychological safety in a team. That's a result that happens thereafter. Psychological safety is a very interesting way of putting it. And again, yeah, if you feel like every month or so you're up for scrutiny and you're not getting consistently long-term backed to almost take that immediate short-term game pressure off, I can understand how that can affect team morale. But then Alan Permain's departure kind of went a bit more under the radar because, Otmar was the team principal, but they both left Alpine at the same time. And Alan Permain was an absolute stalwart at that team, the definition of stalwart. He'd been there for 34 years across their Benetton, Lotus and Renault days. That's kind of experience that doesn't come along very often in this sport. Think how much the sport has changed in those 34 years as well. He's been through it all. And it was no surprise that it didn't take long for probably Christian was involved, and obviously Laurent Mekies, the new team principal at Racing Bulls, brought him on board. Alan was not out of a job for long. Then you've got Bukowski, so he was the team principal before Otmar. Safnauer, he took that role in January 2021, departed in January 2022. I always thought that was a little bit harsh. I don't really see, maybe it's just a stopgap from Dave Dot. But now he's a TV analyst for Viaplay on the Polish F1 broadcast. He used to work FIA as well. He's got a lot of experience in Formula One, both from a FIA point of view and a team point of view. I'd be surprised if a team doesn't bring him in anytime soon, Scripting this video, I almost completely forgot about MotoGP Suzuki extraordinaire team manager Davide Brivio, who was at Alpine, signed in 2021 when they rebranded from Renault to Alpine as race director. He'd only keep that role for a year, then he'd move to more kind of dealing with young drivers and other motorsport activations. I guess World Endurance probably being part of that as well. Now he's gone, he's not part of that, he's gone back to MotoGP now as Davide. Then obviously before Bukowski you had Cyril Abiteboul. What a tenure he had, joining Renault Sport in 2014. He was at Caterham actually beforehand. Joined Renault Sport, tenure 2014 till the end of 2020. And you look at that team's results, to be fair, over that time, 2020 is a bit of a high point, I think, for Renault/Alpine/Enstone in recent years anyway. I'm sure they'd take back the results from that year, 3 podiums with Daniel. They are only 22 points off of McLaren in third that year as well. Luck had gone a bit different for them. They could have been third in the Constructors that year. But Abiteboul was let go. Him and Christian had a good little tiff, didn't they? Some of the highlights of Drive to Survive back then, actually. Abiteboul, he was good energy. Now he's doing WRC team management for Hyundai. Because then finally we've got Laurent Rossi. When Brivio was brought in at the start of 21, so was Laurent Rossi as CEO of Alpine, not team principal, not race director, CEO, the toppest of dogs, all right, or chien, because French. Laurent was the one who came up with this famous 100 race plan. Speaking in 2021, this is great. We have a long-term project. The objective is to reach a level of competitiveness that can place us on the podium as many times as possible in 2024. They are last. From today and 5th, you can easily find a roadmap easily. It's going to be every year a bit better. It's a 100 race project, 4 years, 4 seasons. The worst team on the grid. What great work, Alpine. This aged, some of my videos aged badly, all right? But Laurent Rossi, this one, oh, what a doozy. What a doozy. But look, alongside the press release that kind of prompted this video with Harman and De Beer leaving is a broader plan for the future of this team, because they brought in a brand new technical structure, a 3-pillared approach, they're calling it. Wow, groundbreaking. Does that ring a bell? Maybe? You've got Joe Burnell coming in as Alpine's Technical Director of Engineering. David Wheater will be Technical Director for Aerodynamics, and Kieran Pilbeam will be Technical Director of Performance. Eric Mainan, I think that's how it's pronounced, will continue as Technical Director of the Power Unit team in Viry, France, working primarily on the 2026 engine that Alpine and Renault need. Oh my, please Renault, you need to deliver a good power unit in 2026. If you don't, how does this continue? And on top of all this, Alpine have also announced 2 new Chief Operating Officer roles, one in Enstone, John Woods, one in Viry, Audrey Vastra. But again, why does this restructure ring a bell? Well, McLaren, but Le is France. Upon Seidel's departure and Steller's promotion to team principal, McLaren also announced a restructuring around that time of their technical team, right? 3 technical directors is exactly what they've done. Plus a chief operating officer. Only need 1 because it's all based at McLaren. They don't make their own engines. Peter Prodromou, aerodynamics. David Sanchez, car concept and performance, ex-Ferrari. And Rob Marshall, technical director, engineering and design, ex-Red Bull. With Piers Tin as McLaren's chief operating officer. Now, it's worked for McLaren. Are there any guarantees it'll work for Alpine? Of course not. In fact, Bruno Fama, Alpine team principal, has cited McLaren as kind of a bit of inspiration for this. For sure, we have seen that. It gave us the answer to the question if it may work, and it looks like it's working. I'm not saying it will make everything, of course, but we have seen with McLaren that this kind of organisation can give a boost, and this is what we're looking for. A boost is putting it lightly. Look, restructure all you like. If you don't have the right people in these positions, you're not going to go anywhere. So I've tried to do a little bit of reading into the new people coming in for the three. Joe Burnell, I've tried to do reading into each one, and Joe, I've not been able to find much information. He's going to be new technical director of engineering, so the jury's out on him. See if it works out, hopefully, fingers crossed. David Wheat, a technical director of aerodynamics, is a long-term Estonian, that works. His F1 career began all the way back in the year 2000 at Renault, but then he had a 9-year stint at Williams from 2014 to the end of 2022. He's back at Enstone. He's now leading the aero side of things, doing what Prodromou is doing at McLaren. And then Kieran Pilbeam, who's technical director of performance, well, he's a very decorated performance engineer first and foremost, come head of trackside engineering, which he's been for the last couple of years. He had 7 years as a race engineer at BAR working with Jacques Villeneuve. He also had 7 years at Red Bull being performance engineer to Mark Webber. He had a bit of time at Lotus, a bit of time at McLaren, but then has settled in Enstone since 2017. Look, honestly, best of luck to them, right? As much as it is quite funny to dunk on Renault, it's the senior upper management, the chaos up there that is the humorous part, right? The hundreds of men and women working at Enstone, they do a fantastic job. This is systemic, the issues with this team. It's not being patient. You don't get through so many team principals and don't have so many senior members choosing to walk away if there's not issues at senior level, right, that are affecting that team and holding this team back. Coming up with nonsense like this 100 race plan, that was always waffle. That was always levying unrealistic expectations on this team. It stinks at the minute, and unfortunately it's not going to get any better until 2026 at the absolute earliest, in my opinion. But hopefully with this new structure, just be patient, Renault. Please learn from your mistakes, Luca De Meo, okay? Put good people in charge and just trust them. Give them the autonomy to do what they do best. Alpine, you're really annoying. I'm sitting here watching FP1, right? I'm about to put this video live, and then I remember, oh yeah, someone else has left. Bob Bell had been with Alpine in some way, shape or form since 1997, had various stints at other teams, was a figurehead at that team, briefly team principal in 2009. But now he's moved to Aston Martin, becoming their executive director of technical. So another one bites the dust. I think you can certainly argue that in recent years, this F1 team project has done more harm to the Alpine brand, the Renault brand, than goods. Some may say that no publicity is bad publicity. I disagree. Look, it's important to remember that this rot has not been something that's super long term, right? Like in 2022, they finished 4th in the Constructors, which was pretty good. 6th last year, certainly a downward trajectory, but not as bad as 10th where they are right now. It's not a great look for a manufacturer to be in the bottom half by any stretch, right? But it's not as bad as it could be. Remember, Ocon got a podium in Monaco last year. Gasly got his podium in Zandvoort. He also got a podium in the sprint at Spa. Ocon and Alonso put in some stellar drives in 2022. And in 21, Alonso got his podium in Qatar, and Ocon won the whole bloody thing in Hungary. And he had a perler of a race in Saudi Arabia, didn't he? Remember him going on the outside with Lewis and Max, and Bottas got him at the line as well, which was, oh, what a race that was. Plus, you look at recent years, you look at where McLaren were at the start of last year, you look at where Williams were in like 2019. God, they were nowhere. They were so fortunate to survive through COVID and all that. They've brought it round, and now they've got a quicker car than Alpine, you know? The problem is the momentum is very much against them, and Haas seems to have taken a big step forward in terms of race pace. You know, Joe got 11th in his Sauber, which is a great drive from him. This is Renault, right? Call it Alpine all you like, that makes it sound like a little independent. This is Renault, finishing behind Haas, probably this year, as things stand. That is, oh my God, so bad. It's Herculeanly awful. And this is where for many the Andretti name comes into the conversation, and we've spoken about this on the channel before, how, you know, if Renault was starting from scratch, would they choose to have their race team based in a little village in Oxfordshire and their engine plant in Viry? No, of course not. They'd just have the whole thing in France. Of course they would, right? This is 15% French state owned as well. Give French jobs to French people at a French factory. Obviously it hasn't turned out like that. They've got this Enstone facility with loads of people employed, and protecting those jobs is very important. That's where selling to Andretti would make sense, in terms of selling that facility anyway and those staff, and then almost using this opportunity to start afresh in Viry, because ultimately that's what Renault would prefer in the long term. But at the end of the day, like, Andretti, first of all, they don't have an entry. If they do get an entry, then, well, long term, they want to have most of their stuff based out of Fishers in Indiana, their brand new facility that they're building for all of their motorsport disciplines, be that, you know, IndyCar, FE, F1. Do I worry that they would just then get rid of Enstone and close that down in a few years' time once Fishers is ready? Yeah, I would worry about that, to be honest. But then could Andretti just go all in on that Enstone facility, still have a presence in Fishers, but really make that a European hub for that team? It's a bit different having a factory in the UK and one in France. Like, at the end of that, it's not actually that far, but having a factory in the US and in Europe, when so much of the calendar is European centric and all of the talent as well, the established talent, is Motorsport Valley, which is where Enstone is, does make more justifiable sense. Ultimately, do I actually see that happening? Just them selling the factory to Andretti and keeping their entrant into Formula One, not selling the entrant, keeping the entrant to themselves, but just selling the factory? I don't really see that. Only if you got a 12 team maybe wanting to come in and snap it up, which, I mean, I'd love that. 12 teams is surely the perfect number for F1, surely. But I digress. Back to the reputation thing, because that's the crux of it. I think it gets lost just how big a player Renault is, right? The Renault Group, which, if you didn't know, is 15% owned by the French state and 15% owned by Nissan, compromises of Renault, Dacia, Alpine. Those kind of three brands are the core, and obviously Dacia's like a massive brand that's grown, particularly in, I remember going to Morocco last year. I'd say 2/3 of the cars I saw on the road were Dacias. They're cheap, easy to mass produce cars, aren't they? So that fits that for Renault. You've got Dacia's the kind of cheap brand, you've got Renault that's the established name and, you know, the mid-range brand, and then Alpine is their performance brand, what kind of Lexus is to Toyota or Genesis is to Hyundai. I've moaned about this before regarding Alpine. When Renault relaunched the brand in 2017 with the A110, that's still the only car they make. Obviously, there's been a lot of vibes around the Renault 5 recently, which looks incredible for sure, and there will be an Alpine version of that car. They've teased a bunch of new models actually, and a US launch in 2027. This is a really exciting time for that brand. Yet you've got your biggest marketing expense, Formula One, absolutely in the mud. Even their World Endurance car, I mean, in Qatar, the first round, the two Alpine cars were like 9th and 14th or anything, nowhere near. The primary purpose of a brand like Renault using Alpine in motorsport, their performance brand in motorsport, is to show the brand to the world, build positive brand efficacy, right? Make people see that brand in a positive light and sell cars ultimately. That is the point, that's their business. I love the A110, I'm a big fan of that car. I could see myself owning that car one day if my funds allow it. But that's in spite of the performance on track in F1, not because of it. Look, Alpine, please, you've got this structure, stick to it, give them time, stop chopping and changing. I beg you, please stop chopping and changing, just be patient. Throw everything at this engine. Everything. This engine in 2026 has to cook. There is no alternative, right? That's what I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.